He had me close my eyes and walked with my eyes closed 200 feet along the edge of a barge that was 12 feet up out of water and empty, and he gave me directions.
Welcome back to Everyone Has a Story. True tales from everyday life. We're so glad you're here. Now this story is about a young deckhand and the lesson he mastered while walking along the edge of a river barge with his eyes closed. From deckhand to master, Captain Jay Wiek has done it all. Discover how he learned the hard way the skills to master a multitude of vessels. The pitfalls and achievements along the way, where he learned early on to stay the course and be responsible for his actions. We'll learn about how his career shifted when he learned the ins and outs of the mysterious Z drive and his prize lesson that you simply don't know what you don't know. Along the way, he shares priceless life lessons and gives advice to those who would like to enter the industry. Folks, here's Captain Jay.
I had really thought for a moment that I was maybe on a path to trying to be a lifetime deckhand. I'd been on deck for, a few years and enjoyed it. It was out there. And by the deckhand side of things, there is not the same demands from the office and from up above. I felt like I was shielded as a deckhand. I work for a captain, and so there's just one person that I have to stay in focus and in tune with, and that I kind of got comfortable with that thought process that, I can count to one, so this is pretty easy for me to stay in touch with them, where when you get in the wheelhouse, now you've got multiple people and contractors and stuff, and, everything is about the ETA and timing, and I kept thinking, do I want to do that? And then I thought, you know what? This captain that I'm working with today, he's just not very good. I think I can do that. And I thought, I better get a license and do it. If I think that, it's time to move forward. I thought back to all the people and the captains that came around the house as a little kid and all the stories that I heard and I thought back to a couple of different captains, and one of them told me, it's running a boat, son. He goes, just remember, it's not rocket science. Just look at those people out there and think about it. If they can do it, you can probably do it too. And that kind of became my thought process for a while. The process was, they're doing it and I want to do it. There's no reason I can't. And gosh, if it isn't rocket science, I probably can accomplish it. And so I decided that I wanted to run a boat. Once I got the stick in my hand and I got up there behind the wheel, so to say, in the wheelhouse, it brought back so many memories, and almost all of them were just great memories of my dad, and all the teaching that he gave me started to come forward. I was very, very fortunate that he was a good teacher. But I mean, from the first days riding, before I was ever in grade school, he was teaching me, some things I didn't understand, obviously. Most of the things probably, but at any rate, he had taught me, to be very aware, see the whole picture of everything. Don't get so focused on one thing. He said, if you're coming in to make a landing, check out the piling or a fixed object where you are and see where the V is in the water. Then you'll know which way the set is, how the water's moving, so you know how your boat's going to react as it gets in close there. Is it moving back? Is it moving to the dock? Is it pushing you off? So that you can be prepared, because he always thought the best thing you can do is to act, not to react. And this was the type of memories that started coming back to what to look at and how to position yourself. And he always said, never use too much power. He said, it's easy to run a boat. The more power you use, the crash is just a lot worse. And that sort of made sense to me after a while, that the slower you went doing something, whether it's going to a bridge or whatever, the more effects the current, the wind, everything was having on what you were doing. And so you had to think ahead further. But it was better. And so he taught me to utilize all the aspects of Mother Nature, if you will, and the current and the wind and everything that was there, and to be aware of what it was. And his way of putting this evaded me for a long time until I got old enough that I understood it. He always looked at me and said, just remember, it's easier to fall off a horse than it is to climb back on. And I thought, what a silly comment on a boat. There's no horses out here. But as he was saying, work into the current, stay to the high side, because all you got to do is stop, and the wind and the current are going to push you back the other way. So if you're on the good side, you have room to be pushed back into where it needs to be. But if you get to the bad side of a bridge, pier, or a piling or anything, you may not have enough horsepower, time, and rudder to get yourself back out. And so that aspect of falling off the horse is easy. You can stop and do it. But to climb back on that horse, yeah, it's a little tougher sometimes. For me, it came from applying for a job when I was an early licensed captain, and I had an owner of the company tell me that I wasn't qualified. Well, this was like somebody slapping me right alongside the head, and I was like, well, nobody's going to tell me that. I'm going to go figure out how to do this. The truth of the matter was I didn't even have the right license to do it. I was so uneducated in the aspects I just wanted to do. That was all there was. But I never allowed myself to get in that same position. And so whether I witnessed an example, I first went to passenger boats. I wish I witnessed an accident happen. And I took that information away from there and educated myself, put myself into classes, made myself more aware of the situation. When I had a situation that I got, turned down for a job, well, it meant I need to find out what I can do so that he's going to call me and ask me to come to work, in the future. And to do that, you just have to keep learning and keep at it. And I guess an example is I tried to volunteer when Z-Drive propulsion was a newer thing in the industry, for me at least. And I volunteered to go down and ride on a boat with one of the companies. And it was a company I didn't work for. And I think they probably thought I was a little bit dumb to call up and ask if I could just walk on and ride. But I knew these people, and I thought, they're going to let me, of course. Well, they didn't, because as he put it to me, you're an insurance risk on the boat, and you don't work for us, so you're going to be the competition. Doesn't make good business sense to train the competition. Probably a valid point. But I taught myself. I went out and applied for a job in Alaska on a Z-Drive operational vessel, and got the job. Didn't have the license for it, didn't even know how to operate it. Went and took the test the next day to get the license, and went to the job the following Monday, and then taught myself how to run the boat. And over the course of time, I developed a real appreciation for the Z-Drive operation, and found it for me to be superior. And I ended up working 6 or 8 different Z-Drive vessels over my career. And towards the end, when I was where we met at Majestic American on the American Queen, I was at the point where my boss would fly me to the Maritime Institute to evaluate people to see if they were up to speed to run Z-Drives, if we were hiring somebody. And I was kind of chuckled. I went from self-taught and not even understanding anything about it to being the guy that finally said, you were approved to go to work on this vessel. And I think that's just a basic way that you should be in the industry, is continue to learn, advance ahead, and acquire all the knowledge you can. It can be a dangerous industry, and the best thing you can do is to learn. And I take from my dad, he used to make a comment, and I made it many times through different aspects, that he with the most information usually wins.
If you're enjoying this story, please give us a like and consider subscribing to our channel. We publish an interview story each week of everyday people with extraordinary stories to tell, like this one. Hit the notification bell to be sure you know each time a video comes out. It sure helps our channel, and we appreciate it more than you know. We're glad you're here.
I always felt it was really important for me, and I was told by some of my managers you couldn't do it on the larger passenger ships like I did on the towboats and that, but I felt it was important to really get to know a little bit about the crew, because when you're doing drills or having an emergency, you need to know who you can count on. And one of the things I always felt across the board is you never put somebody in a position to fail with the job you give them. And so, for example, you wouldn't take somebody that was claustrophobic and put them in a SCBA to be on the fire team. It would be, a situation of failure. Same thing. I needed to know the people that I used as messengers on each level to communicate with the different people on the fire team if, they didn't have radio contact at the moment. And so I needed to know people that were quick to respond and wouldn't embellish and were comfortable doing it and that. And so you needed to understand, and that was my style. And then from that, in the event, even in the worst situation happened, I always felt like if you had the opportunity to listen, you just never knew who was going to trigger both your memory or an experience they had that would enrich you, enlighten you in a situation. So my management style was really on a more personal level than just the closed fist type thing that you have to do it this way. I tried to, take the personalities to be the most successful with it. When I went to interview for a captain's position on a boat, there was an accident that occurred while I was there. And it was, of all things, on Mother's Day, and the mother ended up being killed, and the daughter ended up with a serious injury from part of the boom, and some of the structure had come down and hit them. And witnessing all of that, and actually being one of the first people to the mother, and then excused myself, and I went and met the response team from the fire department and paramedics and that. But it allowed me to think about, if I was going to take this job, that it was more than just navigating the vessel, and it was a learning experience. And so I put myself into first aid courses, advanced first aid courses, PIC medical, took even EMT training. And it was because I wanted to make sure I would not be the weak link when I'm communicating to make a decision if there's an injury or something on board. And so that was really an exposure to training coming from going into class and being instructed. One of the first captains I worked with, a guy named Pete Deckhand, and he was a tremendous teacher and trainer, and probably just like my father was one of the most important people training me when I was younger. But I had called him distances going in on a landing, and all the things that I was doing I thought was really right. When I would go along in 5 seconds, I might say, you're 40 feet off or something. And what he did to really train me, and it's something that I thought about, but I really didn't do to others, he had me close my eyes and walk with my eyes closed 200 feet along the edge of a barge that was 12 feet up out of water and empty. And he gave me directions. And when he would say, you're 5 feet from the edge, well, I would stop. And he'd say, you can't stop. You've got to keep going. And I'd say, but I don't know which way I'm going. And then all of a sudden it hit me what he was getting at. And when he would say, you're 5 feet from the edge and you're opening slightly to 6 feet, and I could continue on. And it allowed me to learn the proper way to make a call to somebody to let them understand when they're not able to see something. And so you're always giving them the example. But that one experience of walking with your eyes closed when you're above the water and walking along the edge of it, it was a tremendous training exercise for me. I never repeated that one, but I did express to people that situation to me. If you're training somebody to run a boat, well, I used to sit back and I'd tell them, take it, do what you think is right, ask questions when you need to. And they would, obviously get themselves into trouble at some point in time. And I would tell them, this is what you're going to remember the most, is the things that you're learning or the questions, because a person doesn't know what they don't know until you experience it. And so I never wanted to waste my time telling somebody something that they had no concept or understanding. I wanted them to ask me the question, and then I could try to fill in that blank for them. And so that was really important, I thought, with training, that you get all aspects of it, from being instructed to actually hands-on experience and moving forward, and tried to get those things to come together in an equal body and give them the most information I could. You know, I was kind of reluctant when it was first suggested to me, and fortunately, the person suggesting it, a captain named Walt Smith, I just had so much respect and value for him. He was one of the people that I used to admire. They used to call people like him sagebrush sailors. They ran the Columbia River before, you know, all the dams were in that, and so it was it was a pretty challenging situation, and his experience and knowledge was so beneficial to me. But he had asked me to fill in, that he would sometimes go over and fill in on the passenger boats, and they had an opportunity, but he was currently working, and he asked me if I'd do it, and I was, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And he was like, you know, again, you don't know what you don't know until you go experience it. And that hit a chord with me, and I thought, well, I'll try it. And then as he talked to me, I started thinking, you know, this is something I don't know about. So this is an opportunity to expand my base of knowledge in the industry. And so then I started becoming a little more eager and open to the situation. And probably the most important thing that for me could have happened is there was a gentleman on board on that first trip that had just had a stroke, and his wife had asked their son to bring him along. And I ended up basically narrating the trip to this gentleman. I brought him to the wheelhouse. I took him to show him all aspects of the boat. It made me all of a sudden realize sometimes that this is the only opportunity people have to experience something. And I was sort of the conduit to make that happen. And I realized that was something I really enjoyed, appreciated, and wanted to do the best I could for anybody that came on. And hopefully I tried to keep that in mind all the way through the passenger boat situation. I always asked servers and cabin attendants if there was somebody that had past experience or an injury or a one-time situation, something that was unique, sit them at my table. And I tried to personally become involved and take them to the engine room or take them to the wheelhouse, or try to give them that little extra thing that maybe they couldn't get to. And I was able to grow and learn from that. And so the crossover came reluctantly, but expanded my base of knowledge and appreciation for the whole industry greatly.